I was kicked out of Easter dinner because I brought a stray dog, but that dog led me to a fortune. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. Mine came in the form of a mangy mutt with a torn ear and an attitude that matched my own. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was Easter weekend, 1995, in Rockford, Ohio, a town so small you could sneeze at one end and get "bless you" from the other. I was standing outside my house, the one with paint peeling off like sunburned skin, and a porch that made more noise than my old Ford pickup. That truck was something else, more rust and metal. A Nirvana sticker slapped on a bumper, which, let's be honest, was the coolest part about it. And an engine that sounded like it was one pothole away from giving up. Kind of like me, I guess. At 39, I was exactly living the American dream. No wife, no kids. Just an auto shop that barely paid the bills and memories from Desert Storm that still visited me at night. Not that I was complaining. Life's like my pickup. It rattles along, but it still runs. That Saturday before Easter, I was grabbing a late lunch at Marge's Diner. The one with the flickering neon sign and bottomless coffee that tasted like it was filtered through a dirty sock. But man, those burgers were worth it. As I was tossing my trash in the dumpster out back, I spotted him. The skinny dog with patchy fur, chewing on a soggy cardboard box like it was prime rib. Something about his eyes got me. They weren't sad exactly, more like knowing, like he'd seen some stuff too. I unwrapped what was left of my burger and tossed it his way. "Here you go, buddy. You look like you just walked off the set of the Guns N' Roses video." The dog didn't move at first, just stared at me with those eyes. Then he slowly approached, snatched the burger, and wolfed it down in 2 seconds flat. After he finished, he just sat there, looking at me like he was waiting for instructions. "What, you want an encore?" I laughed. "Sorry, pal, one burger show today." But somehow I ended up at the 7-Eleven buying beef jerky and a cheap collar. By the time we got back to my place, I was calling him Rex. Don't ask me why. He just looked like a Rex. Maybe it was the way he strutted around my yard like he owned it, despite being nothing but bones with fur. That night, as Rex curled up on my worn-out couch, apparently making himself right at home, I remembered I had promised my sister, and I'd come to Easter dinner the next day. And with her perfect suburban house and her perfect suburban husband, Richard, who worked in insurance and thought he was God's gift to financial planning, I almost called to cancel. Family gatherings weren't exactly my scene. Too many questions about when I was going to settle down and do something with my life. But something made me decide to go. Maybe it was the Whitney Houston cassette playing in my truck as I drove home, telling me to believe in myself or whatever. Morning came, and Rex was right there, following me around like we'd been buddies for years. I gave him a quick bath in the backyard with my garden hose and some dish soap. He didn't appreciate it much, but he needed it more than he knew. As we were heading to my truck, Rex darted off to the neighbor's yard and came back proudly carrying a rubber chicken. "Great, now you're a thief," I muttered. "You're officially the worst guest I could bring to Easter dinner." But take him I did. What was I supposed to do? Leave him alone in my house to tear up the place? Besides, deep down, I didn't want to walk into N's perfect house alone again. As we pulled up to N's place, I could already feel my stomach knotting up. Her lawn was decorated with those plastic Easter eggs, and I could see people inside wearing pastel sweaters that probably still had Walmart tags on them. The faint sound of Macarena drifted through the windows. God help me. I looked down at my faded flannel shirt and jeans with a grease stain I tried to scrub out. Rex sat beside me in the passenger seat, that rubber chicken still clutched in his mouth like a trophy. "Listen, buddy," I told him. "Best behavior. Okay? These people are different. They like things neat. Think you can handle that." Rex tilted his head and made a snorting sound that I chose to interpret as agreement. We didn't even make it to the front door before N spotted us. Her eyes went wide, first at my outfit. Apparently flannel wasn't Easter appropriate. Then at Rex. "Tom, you brought a dog? To Easter dinner?" The way she said it made it sound like I'd dragged in a rabid raccoon. "This is Rex," I said, like that explained everything. Rex, sensing tension, clutched his rubber chicken tighter and pressed against my leg. "That thing is fleas, I just know it," and whispered harshly, glancing around to make sure none of her precious guests had seen us yet. "And what is that in its mouth? Is that a chicken toy?" I was about to defend Rex's honor when Richard appeared behind and, drink in hand, looking like an ad for middle management with his sweater vest and khakis. "Tom," he said with that fake smile of his, "you made it, and you brought company." Before I could say anything, Rex pushed past him into the house, rubber chicken squeaking with each step. I followed quickly, tried to keep an eye on him while navigating through Ann's Pottery Barn showroom of a living room. The gathering was exactly what I expected. Ann's church friends, Richard's golf buddies, all standing around talking about lawn care and property values. A few of them actually seemed happy to see me, which was nice. Old Mrs. Jenkins even asked about my shop. For a moment, I thought things might be okay. Rex was behaving, sitting at my feet while I balanced a plate of ham and scalloped potatoes. Then, Ann announced it was time to move to the dining room for the formal dinner. The long table was set with her good china, which she mentioned at least 3 times, crystal glasses that I was apparently not trusted to wash when I'd help with dishes at Christmas, and a massive centerpiece of Easter lilies. Everyone took their assigned seats. Yes, she had placed cards, and I found myself at the far end, next to the kids' table. Classic Ann. Rex settled under my chair, surprisingly calm given the circumstances. I slipped him a piece of ham, feeling like maybe we'd actually survive this. Until Richard started his traditional Easter prayer. It was always long-winded, thanking the Lord for everything from the food to the stock market. As his droning continued, I noticed Rex getting restless, shifting under my chair. "Easy, boy," I whispered. But Rex had spotted something. Richard's cat, Precious, strutting along the edge of the room. Before I could grab his collar, Rex shot out from under the table, rubber chicken still in mouth, and lunged toward the cat. Precious took off like a rocket, straight across the dining table. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Rex jumped, and I mean jumped, landing right in the middle of Ann's perfect table. Plates clattered, glasses toppled, and the massive gravy boat went flying, splattering brown sauce all over Ann's cream-colored tablecloth and Richard's pastel sweater vest. The room fell silent for exactly 2 seconds before erupting. Kids started laughing and screamed. Richard stood up looking like he might actually explode, and Precious the cat was now hanging from the curtains. Rex, apparently satisfied with the chaos he created, sat down right in the middle of the table and dropped his rubber chicken into what remained of the mashed potatoes. I couldn't help it. I laughed, not a small chuckle, but full-blown, tears-in-my-eyes laugh that I hadn't experienced since before the war. And I managed to say between gasps, "Is this what they call sauce chic? New spring fashion for tablecloths." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. Richard was the one who finally snapped. "Out!" he bellowed, pointing at the door. "Get that mongrel and get out of my house. This is Easter dinner. For God's sake. You're an embarrassment, Tom. Always have been." The room went quiet again. Even the kids stopped laughing. I looked around at the faces staring at me. Some embarrassed, some pitying, some secretly amused, and wouldn't meet my eyes. Without a word, I picked up Rex, rubber chicken and all, and headed for the door. No point arguing. No point trying to explain that it was an accident, that Rex was just being a dog. They'd made up their minds about me long ago. Outside, it started to rain, those cold April showers that somehow feel personal, like the sky is crying just for you. Rex pressed against my leg as we walked to the truck, his fur already getting soaked. "Maybe we're the same, buddy," I said quietly as I opened the passenger door for him. "Nobody really wants us around." As I pulled away from his perfect house with its perfect decorations and perfectly miserable people, something shifted inside me. Rex sat beside me, wet and smelly, still clutching that stupid rubber chicken, looking at me like I was the best thing he'd ever seen. And suddenly it hit me. Sometimes family isn't the people sitting around a table. Sometimes it's whoever walks with you in the rain. I reached over and scratched behind Rex's torn ear. "Well, Rex, let's go find our luck somewhere else." Rex leaned into my hand, his eyes closing in contentment, and I swear he smiled. Just a little, but it was there. As we drove through the rain back to my shabby little house, I felt lighter somehow. Maybe getting kicked out of Easter dinner was exactly the miracle I needed. I woke up the next morning to the sound of springs creaking, but it wasn't me doing the moving. Somehow during the night, Rex had claimed my only decent pillow and was sprawled across 2/3 of my couch, snoring like a chainsaw with asthma. His paws twitched as he chased something in his dreams, probably that rubber chicken, which was now lying on the floor, looking even more pathetic in the morning light. "You've got some nerve," I told him, taking my spot and not even offering to pay property tax on it. Rex opened one eye, gave me a look that clearly said, "Too bad, this is mine now," then went right back to snoring. The TV was still on from the night before, now showing some commercial for a Tamagotchi, those little digital pet things that kids were going crazy for. The irony wasn't lost on me as I glanced between the screen and the very real, very loud dog monopolizing my couch. I shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee. Folgers, because I'm not one of those fancy latte people. The rich aroma filled my small house as I rummaged through the fridge, finding half a Domino's pizza from Friday night. "Breakfast of champions," I muttered, taking a cold slice for myself and tossing another to Rex, who suddenly became very awake and alert at the sound of the pizza box opening. He wolfed it down in seconds, then sat at my feet, looking expectant. "That's it, buddy. I'm not made of pizza." While I ate my slice and sipped my coffee, I watched Rex explore the living room, sniffing everything like he was cataloging my life. For a stray with a torn ear and patchy fur, he moved with surprising purpose. When the phone rang, he barked once, sharp and direct, like he was announcing an important visitor. "You expecting a call?" I asked him. Rex just tilted his head and stared at me. It was my sister and probably calling to lecture me about yesterday. I let the answer machine pick up. What happened next surprised me. Azan's voice filled the room, complaining about Rex and the ruined dinner. The dog trotted over to where my work boots sat by the door and picked one up in his mouth. He carried it over me and dropped it at my feet. "You bringing me my shoes now? What are you, a butler?" Rex picked up the other boot and brought it over too. I had to laugh. "You sleep like a mob boss but look like a homeless bum. Now you're bringing me my shoes? You're a weird one, Rex." But I got the message. It was Monday and I needed to open the shop. My auto repair place isn't much. Just a 2-bay garage with a small office, about 3 miles from my house. I've owned it for almost 10 years, ever since I got back from Desert Storm, and needed something to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. I'm not getting rich, but it pays the bills and keeps me in Folgers and pizza. I wasn't sure what to do with Rex while I worked. Leaving him at the house seemed like asking for trouble. Who knew what he'd destroy while I was gone? But bringing a dog to work wasn't exactly professional either. "You gonna behave if I take you with me?" I asked him. Rex picked up that stupid rubber chicken again and squeaked it once, which I took as a yes. The shop smelled of motor oil, metal, and the cheap Pine air fresheners I hang everywhere to try to mask the other smells. My first appointment wasn't until 10, so I had time to get Rex settled in the small back room where I kept my tools and the ancient coffee maker that had probably seen Desert Storm itself. I made him a bed out of an old moving blanket and set out a bowl of water. Home sweet home for the day. "Don't touch anything that looks expensive." Rex circled the blanket 3 times before flopping down, rubber chicken still in his mouth. He looked so content that I almost envied him. Life seemed simple from his perspective. I turned on the radio. Metallica's Enter Sandman filled the garage as I started prepping for the day. The poster of the band on my wall had been there so long it was yellowed around the edges. But I couldn't bring myself to take it down. Some things just become part of you. My first customer was Old Man Jenkins with his '87 Buick that made more noise than it should. As I popped the hood to check it out, Rex emerged from the back room, stretching like he owned the place. Old Man Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "Got yourself a shop dog, Tom?" "Something like that. Found him yesterday. Name's Rex. Looks like he's been through hell." "Haven't we all?" I replied, and Jenkins laughed. The kind of laugh that says he knows exactly what I mean. While I worked on the Buick, Rex made himself comfortable on a patch of sunlight near the office door. Every now and then, he'd open an eye to check on me, then go back to dozing. It was oddly comforting having him there. Around noon, Mrs. Peterson brought in her Taurus for an oil change. She's about 70, drives maybe twice a week to church and the grocery store, but insists on regular maintenance like her cars crossing the country daily. As I was ringing her up, Rex suddenly sprang into action. He grabbed an oily rag from my workbench and took off across the garage with it, tail wagging like he'd stolen the crown jewels. "Rex, drop it," I called, but he was having too much fun. He zipped around the car, under the workbench, and finally stopped in the center of the garage, proudly displaying his prize. Mrs. Peterson, instead of being annoyed, started laughing. Oh my, he's quite the character. That's when a pigeon flew into the open bay door. Rex froze for a split second, then launched into pursuit mode, still clutching the rag. The bird fluttered around the rafters while Rex bounced around below, tried to figure out how to defy gravity. By now, Mrs. Peterson was laughing so hard she had to lean against the counter. "I haven't been this entertained in years," she declared. Word spread quickly. By mid-afternoon, it seemed like half the town had found some excuse to stop by the shop. Suddenly my quiet little business was a place to be, all because of a mutt with a torn ear and a talent for comedy. "You're hired," I told Rex after the last customer left. "But don't expect a paycheck. Shop treats and a warm blanket is all I can offer." The rest of the day passed smoothly. Rex settled into a routine of greeting customers, napping in sun patches, and occasionally stealing tools that I'd have to trade back for dog treats. By closing time, I was more relaxed than I'd been in months. There's something about having company that changes the feel of the place. As I was locking up, Mrs. Donovan from the diner dropped by with leftover meatloaf. "Thought you and your new friend might be hungry," she said with a wink. "It's nice to see you with some company, Tom." I wasn't sure how to feel about becoming the town's newest charity case, but the meatloaf smelled amazing. "Thanks," I managed, taking the container. Rex has definitely made an impression. "On the dog or on you?" she asked with another wink before heading back to her car. It was almost dark by the time we headed home. I stopped at the corner store for beer and picked up some proper dog food for Rex. Seemed like the least I could do for my new business partner. On the drive back, I took the long way, past the edge of town where the houses gave way to fields and forgotten properties. I'm not sure why I did it. Maybe just to clear my head after a surprisingly good day. As we passed by the old dirt road that led to Crow's farm, I slowed down, memories flooding back. The old man sitting on his porch, telling me stories about the town's history. Him showing me that strange symbol, saying it marked things the world ain't ready to know. That was his place, I told Rex, who had been dozing in the passenger seat, but perked up at the sound of my voice. Old Man Crow. Quite a character. I was about to drive on when Rex suddenly stiffened. His ears perked up. He stood on the seat, staring intently at the old farm. "What is it, boy?" Before I could grab him, Rex squeezed through the half-open window and hit the ground running, heading straight for Crow's property. "Rex, damn it!" I shouted, slamming on the brakes and pulling over. "Get back here!" Having a dog was turning out to be worse than having a credit card debt. At least the debt didn't jump out of moving vehicles. I jogged after him, cursing under my breath. "When I catch you, you mangy mutt." Rex led me straight to the rusted gate, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. He squeezed through a gap and looked back at me expectantly. "You gotta be kidding me," I muttered, but found myself climbing over the gate anyway. "This is trespassing, you know. I could get arrested." Rex didn't seem concerned about my potential criminal record. He trotted ahead with purpose, heading straight for the old barn that looked like it might collapse if you sneezed too close to it. The last golden light of day was fading, making the place look even more eerie. I used to stop by here sometimes even as an adult. Old Man Crow wasn't as scary as everyone made him out to be. He was a local fixture for decades. I'd known him since I was a kid. Before he died, he'd still let me help with odd jobs around the farm, and he'd tell stories about the old days while we sat on his porch. "What are we doing here, Rex?" I asked, feeling oddly nervous as we approached the barn. Rex circled the barn's exterior, nose to the ground, clearly searching for something. Then he stopped at a spot near the back wall and began digging enthusiastically, dirt fly between his paws. "Hey, knock it off. This isn't our property." I moved to pull him away, but then something caught my eye. In the fading light, I could just make out the edge of a weatherboard partially buried in the ground where Rex was digging. As I knelt down for a closer look, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just any board. There was a symbol carved into it, a cross with a circle around the center. I'd seen it before, many years ago. Old Man Crow had shown it to me when I was helping him around the farm. He'd pull me aside one day and show me the same symbol carved into a small wooden box he kept. "This mark," he'd said in that gravelly voice of his, "is for the things the world ain't ready to know." I'd asked if it was treasure. Crow had just smiled mysteriously and said, "Depends on what you value, Tom." I'd forgotten all about it until now, seeing that same symbol partly uncovered in the dirt behind his barn. I looked at Rex, who had paused in his digging and was watching me with those intelligent eyes. "How you know about this place?" I asked him, "Did Crow feed strays out here? Is that how you found the spot?" Rex tilted his head, then resumed digging with even more determination. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. It was almost as if Rex had deliberately brought me here, as if he knew something was buried here that I needed to find. "If you're looking for my dreams, Rex, they aren't buried here," I muttered, but I found myself helping him dig anyway, scooping dirt away with my hands. The board was bigger than I initially thought, about 2 feet long and a foot wide. As we uncovered more of it, I could see the symbol more clearly. Definitely the same one Crow had shown me all those years ago. I sat back on my heels, mind racing. What had the old man hidden here? And how the hell did Rex know about it? The sky had darkened to deep purple, and I realized we'd need better tools to continue. The mysterious board seemed firmly embedded in the ground, and I was only going to get filthy using my hands. "Hold on, Rex," I told him. "I've got a flashlight and a shovel in the truck." Rex whined softly but stopped digging. He looked at me with what I swear was understanding, like he knew I wasn't abandoning our discovery. I stood up, dusting dirt from my jeans. "You got something big planned, don't you, boy?" I said, giving him a quick pat before turning back toward my truck. Whatever Crow had buried here, it seemed Rex was determined for me to find it. And honestly, I was just as curious as a dog. I jogged back to my truck, the fading twilight making it hard to see where I was stepping. My mind was racing faster than my feet. What had Crow buried out here? And why did Rex seem to know exactly where to look? The truck's glove compartment yielded an old Eveready flashlight that flickered when I turned it on, better than nothing. I grabbed a rusty shovel I kept behind the seat for those occasional Midwest snowstorms and headed back to where Rex was waiting, still guarding our discovery like it contained his lifetime supply of dog treats. "All right, detective," I told him as I approached. "Let's see what you found." The flashlight cast long shadows across the weathered barn wall. As I started digging around the wooden board, Rex paced around me in circles, occasionally stopping to bark as if giving instructions. "If there's nothing here but dirt, Rex, I'm cutting off your pizza privileges for life," I muttered, already sweating despite the cool evening air. The board was stuck fast, like it had been deliberately set in place. I dug around perimeter, careful not to damage whatever might be underneath. After about 15 minutes of struggling, I finally worked the shovel blade under one edge and pried it up. Rex barked excitedly, jumping back and forth. "Easy, boy," I said, wedging the shovel deeper. "Almost there." With a sound like breaking suction, the board finally came free. I pulled it aside and aimed my flashlight into the hole. There, nestled in the dirt like something from a pirate movie, was a metal box about the size of a small suitcase. It had a simple padlock securing it, now rusted and fragile with age. My heart started pounding like I'd just run a marathon. I glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out of the shadows and claim whatever I'd found. But there was only Rex, now digging furiously a few feet away from the hole. "Rex, check this out," I whispered, but he was too focused on his own excavation project. I knelt beside the metal box, brushing away decades of dirt. The flashlight revealed what looked like initials engraved on the top. GC, George Crow. This was definitely the old man's hiding spot. The padlock broke easily in my hands, crumbling with rust. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Golden light reflected back from my flashlight. The box was filled with coins, gold coins, nestled in a velvet cloth that had somehow survived a years underground. They gleamed like they'd been minted yesterday. Not a speck of dirt on them. Holy! I couldn't even finish the sentence. My hands were actually shaking as I picked up one of the coins. It was heavy, with a date stamped on it, 1872. The image of Lady Liberty on one side, and an eagle on the other, was still crisp and clear. There had to be at least 100 coins in the box, maybe more, and beneath them, a folded piece of paper. I carefully unfolded it to find Crow's unmistakable handwriting. For the one who values goodness over greed, use it wisely. I sat back on my heels, stunned. This isn't happening, Rex. We can't just have found whatever this is. But Rex wasn't listening. He had finally succeeded in his own mission and proudly trotted over to me with his prize, a massive, yellow bone clenched in his jaws. He dropped it at my feet with a look of absolute triumph. That's when it hit me. Rex hadn't led me here for the treasure at all. He'd been looking for that bone, probably buried it himself back when Crow was still feeding strays on his property. The treasure was just a lucky accident. I couldn't help but laugh. You're digging for bones while I'm finding gold. Different treasures for different species, I guess. Rex picked up his bone again and settled down to gnaw on it, completely uninterested in my box of gold coins. To him, his decayed old bone was the real prize. I carefully replaced everything in the box, my mind spinning with possibilities. This wasn't just a few old coins. This was a serious find, the kind that could change a person's life. This isn't a dream, Rex, I whispered. We just hit the jackpot. I knew I should probably call the police or a museum or someone official, but something held me back. Crow had left that note for a reason. He'd deliberately hidden this treasure and marked it with a symbol. And somehow, through Rex's bone-hunting instincts, it found its way to me. I decided to take it home, figure things out in the morning when I could think straight. I wrapped the box in my jacket and carried it back to the truck, Rex trotting happily beside me with his massive bone. That night, I barely slept. I kept getting up to check that the box was still there, sitting on my kitchen table. I counted the coins, 137 of them, all gold, all from the 1870s. I didn't know much about antique coins, but I knew enough to realize this was major. By the time morning light filtered through my windows, I'd made a decision. I needed an expert's opinion, and in Rockford, that meant one person. Joe Burrows, the antiques dealer whose shop sat between the hardware store and the diner on Main Street. Joe was in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent cigarette, Camel unfiltered, hanging from his lips. He'd been selling antiques in Rockford since before I was born. If anyone would know what these coins were worth without broadcasting it to the world, it would be Joe. I left Rex at home with his prize bone, worried he might make a scene in Joe's cluttered shop. The place smelled of old books and cigarette smoke, with barely enough room to walk between the towering shelves of vintage items. Joe was reading a newspaper behind the counter when I walked in, the bell above the door announcing my arrival. "Tom Hayes," he said without looking up. "Don't usually see you in here. Your truck finally break down beyond repair." "Not yet," I replied, setting my backpack on the counter. "Got something I'd like you to look at, Joe." Privately. That got his attention. He folded his newspaper and peered at me over his glasses. "Sound mysterious. Come on back." He led me to a small office in the rear of the shop, clearing a stack of auction catalogs off a chair for me. I carefully removed the metal box from my backpack and set it on his desk. "Found this out at Old Man Crow's place," I said, figuring there was no point in lying. "Was hoping you could tell me what I'm looking at." Joe's eyebrows shot up when I opened the box. He actually removed a cigarette, something I'd rarely seen him do. "Jesus Christ, Tom," he whispered, picking up one of the coins with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. He examined it under a magnifying glass, turning it over carefully. "These are St. Gaudens double eagles, $20 gold pieces." He picked up another. "And Liberty Head double eagles, all in near-mint condition. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Where exactly did you say you found these?" I explained about Rex leading me to the farm, digging for his bone, and accidentally uncovering the treasure. Joe listened without interrupting, occasionally picking up another coin to examine it. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "These aren't just any gold coins, Tom. Some of these dates are extremely rare. This 1879 alone," he held up one coin, "could be worth $50,000 to the right collector." My mouth went dry. And all of them together? Joe did some calculations on a notepad, occasionally referring to a book he pulled from a shelf. Conservative estimate? Around $2.5 million. Could be more at auction. The room seemed to spin for a second. That kind of money was beyond my comprehension. More than I'd earned in several lifetimes changing oil and fixing transmissions. "But," Joe said, holding up a finger, "there's a problem." Of course there was. Nothing this good comes without complications. The farm isn't yours, Tom. It belongs to the town now. Legally speaking. Anything found on that property belongs to the property owner. My heart sank. So the town gets it all? If they find out about it, yes. The government could claim it too, depending on the circumstances. These things get complicated. He took a long drag from his cigarette. "I thought your big break would be finding coupons for free chicken wings at the diner, not stumbling on a fortune in gold coins." I sat in silence for a moment, digesting this information. I thought about Crow's note, for the one who values goodness over greed. "What would you do, Joe?" I asked. He chuckled. "Me? I keep my mouth shut. Hide it somewhere safe. Sell a coin or two at a time to dealers in different cities. Spread it out over years. But that's just me." He shrugged. "I've never been what you'd call a model citizen." I thanked him for his advice, repacked the coins, and headed back to my truck. The weight of the decision felt heavier than the box of gold in my backpack. Back home, I found a hiding spot for the coins, a loose floorboard in my bedroom closet where I'd once hidden birthday presents for my nephew. Not the most original hiding place, but it would do for now. Rex was still working on his bone, having barely made a dent in it. He looked up when I entered, tail wagging like he was saying, "Wasn't that the best bone ever?" "You're either a genius or I'm an idiot for following you," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "But either way, we're in this together now." I decided to open the shop as usual, act normal, give myself time to think. But normal flew out the window before noon. I was under Mrs. Peterson's car when I heard Rex bark an alarm. Rolling out from beneath the chassis, I found him standing at the garage entrance, growling at something. That something turned out to be my neighbor, Marge, who was dropping by uninvited as usual. Rex had somehow gotten into my backpack and had pulled out one of the gold coins. It was now lying in plain view on the garage floor. Before I could snatch it up, Marge's eyes locked onto the gleaming metal. "Is that real gold, Tom? Looks old." And just like that, the clock started ticking. I tried to play it off, said it was just a replica coin from my grandfather. But Marge's eyes had that gleam that meant gossip was brewing. She picked it up before I could stop her, feeling its weight. "This feels real heavy, Tom. And look at the date. 1872? Where'd you really get this?" I stumbled through an explanation about collecting old coins, but Marge wasn't buying it. She handed the coin back reluctantly and left with that look in her eye, the one that said she'd just struck gossip gold. By lunchtime, I had 3 casual visitors swing by the shop, all finding some reason to mention treasure or gold or sudden windfalls. Apparently, Marge had connected my coin to the recent gossip about me being out at Crow's old farm. She'd spotted my truck parked there last night while driving home from her sister's place. I was under a Dodge minivan when I heard someone say, "So that's why he suddenly got a dog." Needed a treasure hunter. I rolled out to find half a dozen people in my garage, pretending they all needed urgent car repairs. Rex was hiding in the back room, apparently smarter than me about avoiding unwanted attention. By closing time, my phone was ringing nonstop. I unplugged it. As darkness fell, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching cars drive slowly past my house. Rex lay at my feet, occasionally growling when someone lingered too long. "We've stirred up a hornet's nest, buddy," I told him, "and I'm not sure what to do about it." Around 8 o'clock, when I was considering turning in early, a black sedan I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. Two men in cheap suits got out and approached my porch. "Mr. Hayes?" the taller one asked. "I'm Agent Wilson, and this is Agent Morris. We're with the Internal Revenue Service." They flashed badges that looked official enough, but something felt off. Maybe it was how their suits didn't quite fit right, or how their shoes were scuffed in a way no federal employee would allow. Or maybe it was just that the IRS doesn't typically make house calls at 8 p.m. "We understand you've come into possession of some valuable items," the shorter one, Morris, said. "We need to discuss the tax implications." Rex stood up, the hair on his back rising as he let out a low growl. He was picking up on the same vibes I was. "Funny," I said, not getting up from my chair. "I didn't realize the IRS made evening house calls about rumors." Wilson's smile tightened. "We take potential tax evasion very seriously, Mr. Hayes. May we come in? This would be better discussed privately." Rex's growl deepened. I put a hand on his back, partly to calm him and partly to keep him from lunging at our visitors. "Now's not a good time," I said. "Why don't you leave a card, and I'll have my accountant call your office tomorrow." They didn't have cards, of course, just more insistence that I needed to cooperate right away. "I think you should leave," I said finally, standing up. Rex moved to my side, still growling. "And next time you pretend to be federal agents, maybe invest in better suits." Their friendly facade dropped instantly. Wilson took a step forward, but stopped when Rex barked sharply. "You're making a mistake, Hayes," he said. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "The easy way is you getting off my property before I call the real police," I replied. They retreated slowly, getting back into their sedan. As they pulled away, Morris rolled down his window. "We'll be seeing you again," he called out. "Count on it." I locked the doors and windows that night, something I rarely bothered with in Rockford. Rex patrolled the house restlessly, stopping occasionally to look out the windows. "Something tells me this isn't over," I told him as we settled in for the night, the box of coins now hidden in a new spot under the kitchen floorboards. "We need to think fast." Rex laid his head on my knee, looking up with those knowing eyes of his. For a dog that started out as a stray eating from dumpsters, he'd certainly led me into deeper waters than I ever expected. As I scratched behind his torn ear, I couldn't help thinking that maybe the real treasure wasn't the gold coins at all, but this strange, loyal companion who'd come into my life and turned it upside down in less than 48 hours. I'd figure out what to do about the coins tomorrow. For now, I just needed to keep us both safe from whatever storm was brewing. "We need to think fast, Rex," I whispered. "Real fast." I didn't sleep much that night, moving the box of coins twice before finally stashing it beneath the loose floorboard in my bathroom, a spot I figured even the most determined treasure hunter wouldn't check first. Rex took guard duty seriously, pacing from window to window and growling at every passing car. By morning, we were both exhausted. I shuffled to the kitchen in my boxers and faded Metallica t-shirt, desperate for coffee. Rex had finally settled down, though not in the way I'd hoped. He was sprawled in the living room, happily destroying my left Nike, the good one without the oil stain. "Seriously?" I muttered, pouring myself a cup of Folgers. "Those cost $80. Rex looked up at me with shreds of shoelace hanging from his mouth, tail thumping against the floor like he'd done me some great service. Like he was saying, "You're welcome. This ugly thing won't bother you anymore. Are you my fashion consultant or just a shoe assassin?" I asked him, reaching for the remote to turn on the morning news. The local channel was running a story about the Rockford Animal Shelter. I turned up the volume as footage showed volunteers removing cages and equipment from a small building on the edge of town. After 12 years of operation, the shelter will close its doors this Friday due to lack of funding. The remaining animals will be transferred to facilities in neighboring counties, though space is limited. I watched as they interviewed the shelter director, tears in her eyes as she explained they'd tried everything to stay afloat. Tax dollars were tight, donations had dried up, and the building itself needed repairs they couldn't afford. Something twisted in my gut. After coming back from Desert Storm, I'd spent a lot of time volunteering at that shelter. Something about helping those animals had helped me too, given me purpose when I was struggling to readjust to civilian life. I'd even driven strays there myself when I found them, making sure they had a fighting chance. And now it was closing. Rex must have sensed my mood shift. He abandoned the decimated Nike and padded over to where I sat, resting his chin on my knee, his eyes fixed on mine with that uncanny understanding. "Don't look at me like that," I told him. "It's not like I can fix it." Rex lifted his paw and placed it on my free hand, as if to say, "Actually, you can." "What are you now, a mind reader?" I asked him. The news shifted to a weather report, sunny with a chance of nosy neighbors, apparently, because right on cue, there was a knock at my front door. Rex's ears went back, and he let out a low growl. So much for our fake tax agents giving up. I peered through the peephole, surprised to see not the men in cheap suits, but my sister and holding what looked like a pie. "Great," I muttered to Rex. "Just what we need." I opened the door, pasting on what I hoped was a neutral expression, and stood there with her perfect hair and perfect makeup, smiling that smile that never quite reached her eyes. The pie, cherry from the looks of it, was still warm. "Good morning, Tom," she chirped, as if she hadn't kicked me out of her house 3 days ago. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, knowing this was going to be interesting, and hadn't set foot in my house in over 2 years, claiming it triggered her allergies. Yet here she was, pie in hand, stepping gingerly over my threshold like she was entering a minefield. Rex positioned himself between us, eyeing him with deep suspicion. "What brings you by?" I asked, not bothering with small talk, and set the pie on my coffee table, carefully avoiding looking directly at Rex. Can a sister check on her brother? Especially after... She paused, glancing around my living room as if expecting to see gold coins scattered across the floor. "Recent events." "Recent events?" "Oh, you know how people talk," she said with a wave of her hand. "Marge mentioned you might have found something valuable out at the old Crow place." Her voice went up at the end. "Fishing." Ah, so that was it. The rumor mill had reached the upscale part town. "We're family, Tom," and continued when I didn't respond. "Families should stick together, don't you think?" Rex made a sound that was half snort, half growl. "Smart dog." "Funny," I said, crossing my arms. "That's not what Richard was saying on Easter," and had the decency to look embarrassed, if only for a second. Richard feels terrible about that. We both do. It was the heat of the moment. I might have believed her if she hadn't kept glancing around the room, clearly searching for signs of newfound wealth. Her gaze lingered on my battered furniture and the hole in the carpet where I'd once dropped a cigarette. "So," she said finally, "is it true? Did you find something out there?" Before I could answer, Rex darted forward and grabbed his rubber chicken from beneath the coffee table, shaking it aggressively as if to warn and to back off. The sudden movement made us both jump, and his eyes went wide. "What's wrong with that dog?" "He doesn't like pushy people," I said, not bothering to hide my meaning. Funny thing about Rex, he's a great judge of character, and his friendly facade slipped just a notch, revealing the calculation beneath. "Tom, listen to me," she said, leaning forward. "If you found something valuable, you need to be careful. There are legal considerations, tax implications. People might try to take advantage." "People like who?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Let Richard and me help you. He knows people, financial advisors, lawyers. Whatever you found, we can help you protect it." She reached out and touched my arm. "That's what family does." Family, right. The same family that had laughed when Rex made a scene at Easter dinner. The same family that called me an embarrassment and kicked me out into the rain. I was saved from responding by the sound of someone dropping mail through my slot, and jumped like she'd been caught doing something wrong, which in a way, she had. "I should go," she said, grabbing her purse. "Think about what I said, okay? We're here for you." As soon as she was gone, I went to retrieve the mail. Among the bills and junk was an official-looking envelope from the Rockford Town Council. My stomach sank as I tore it open. Dear Mr. Hayes, it began. It has come to our attention that you may have removed items of significant value from town property, specifically the former Crow residence at 1420 Old Mill Road. As this property is owned by the municipality, any artifacts, currency, or valuable items found thereon are legally the property of the town of Rockford. It went on with legal jargon, but the message was clear. They wanted the coins. The letter concluded by inviting me to bring any found items to town hall by the end of the week or face potential legal action. Rex emerged from the bedroom, his rubber chicken still in his mouth. He dropped it at my feet, then picked it up again and carried it to his corner, guarding it. You're smarter than half the people in this town, I told him, scratching behind his ears. I stared at the letter again, mind racing. How had the town council found out so quickly? The answer was obvious. Someone had tipped them off. Maybe Anne, maybe Marge. In a town this size, it could have been anyone. I needed advice from someone I could actually trust. My old army buddy, Mike, had gone to law school after we got back from the Gulf. He had a small practice one town over. Divorced dad, lives for his kid, and fishing on weekends. Not fancy, but honest. I called his office from the garage, away from any windows where people might be watching. His secretary put me straight through. Tom, just the guy I was going to call. Half the county's talking about your buried treasure, Mike said, laughing. Please tell me you're not actually walking around town with gold doubloons in your pocket. Not doubloons, I corrected, feeling oddly defensive. Double eagles. And no, I'm keeping them hidden. Jesus, so it's true? Mike's tone changed from amused to concerned. Where are they now? Safe, I said, not wanting to specify, even to Mike. But I got a letter from the town. They're claiming ownership because the farm belongs to them. Mike was quiet for a moment. They have a case, he finally said. But so do you. Abandoned property laws can get complicated. When did Old Man Crow die? About 5 years ago. And did he have any family? Anyone who inherited his estate? Not that I know of. I replied, the town took the land for back taxes. All right, here's what I'm thinking. Mike said, I need to look into some precedents, but there's something called treasure trove law that might apply here. Technically, if these coins were deliberately hidden and abandoned, the finder could have a claim, but we need to prove Crow intended for someone to find them. I thought about the note. For the one who values goodness over greed. I think I might have evidence of that. I said, good. Don't show that letter to anyone, and don't take the coins anywhere. I'll come by your place tonight after work, around 7. We'll figure this out. After hanging up, I felt marginally better. At least I had a plan now, or the beginning of one. I decided to drive by the animal shelter. Maybe there was something I could do, some small way to help that wouldn't draw attention to my sudden ability to make large donations. Rex was eager to join me, jumping into the truck before I could even open the door for him. The rubber chicken was back in his mouth, his constant companion, when we went anywhere. The shelter was a small, cinder-block building at the edge of town. Even from the parking lot, I could see the activity inside, volunteers packing up supplies, a few carrying crates to waiting vehicles. Inside, the smell hit me first, that distinct mix of disinfectant and animal that always made my nose twitch. A few dogs barked from the kennels in the back. There were fewer than I remembered from my volunteering days. A good sign, I hoped. Maybe they'd found homes. An older woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun was directing the packing efforts. I recognized her immediately. Margaret Wilson, the shelter's director for as long as anyone could remember. She'd been here when I brought in strays after coming home from Desert Storm, patient with me when I was dealing with my own issues. She spotted me and Rex, offering a tired smile. Tom Hayes. Been a while since we've seen you around here. Yeah, I said, feeling guilty for how long it had been. Heard you're closing. Margaret nodded, gesturing around the half-empty room. Friday's our last day. County shelter can take some of our animals, but they're already overcrowded. She knelt to pet Rex, examining his torn ear. This one of yours now? He looks like he's had a rough time. We found each other, I said, watching as Rex gently places rubber chicken at Margaret's feet. An offering. He's smarter than he looks. The best ones usually are, she said, her voice catching slightly. These animals, they put their trust in us. And now we're letting them down. Her words hit harder than I expected. I looked around at the remaining dogs in their kennels, the volunteers working with red-rimmed eyes, the donation jar by the front desk with maybe $20 in it. How much would it take? I asked before I could stop myself. To keep this place going, I mean... Margaret raised an eyebrow. More than we've got. Building needs a new roof, heating system shot, and the property taxes keep going up. We're looking at about $80,000 just to get up to code, then operating costs on top of that. She shook her head. Unless there's a miracle, we're done. I nodded, mine already working. $80,000. I could cover that easily with just a few of those coins. But how to do it without raising questions? As we walked back to the truck, Rex seemed unusually subdued, looking back at the shelter several times. He'd been there once, too, another stray waiting for someone to notice him. I know what you're thinking, I told him as we drove home. And you're right. The real treasure, I was starting to realize, wasn't the gold. It was having the power to make a difference. Old Man Crow's note made more sense now, for the one who values goodness over greed. Maybe he'd known all along what kind of test this would be. Back home, I found myself facing another test, one I wasn't prepared for. As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted a dark sedan parked across the street, the same one from last night. Looks like our fake agents are back, I muttered to Rex, who growled in response. I drove past my house, circling the block to approach from another angle. The sedan started its engine, following at a discreet distance. Whoever these guys were, they weren't giving up easily. I pulled into Mrs. Donovan's driveway around the corner, knowing she'd be at the diner until closing. Rex and I cut through her backyard, hopping the fence into my own yard. We slipped in through the back door just as the sedan rolled slowly past the front of the house. Inside, I checked on the coins, still safe under the bathroom floorboard. But for how long? These men knew where I lived. They were watching. And they weren't the only ones interested in what I found. The town wanted their property back, and Richard wanted their cut. And those fake agents, whoever they really were, seemed willing to go to extreme lengths. Meanwhile, the animal shelter was closing, and I was sitting on enough money to save it 10 times over. I thought about what Crow would do. He'd been a loner like me, but he'd always helped where he could, taking in strays, giving neighborhood kids odd jobs when they needed money, living simply but generously. True wealth isn't what you keep, I realized. It's what you give away. But first, I needed to make sure I could keep enough of this treasure to make a difference. And that meant dealing with these fake agents and the town's claim. I called Mike again, filling him in on the men watching my house. Don't confront them, he warned. If they're impersonating federal officers, that's serious business. I'll be there at 7, and we'll figure out our next move. The hours dragged by. I kept the curtains drawn, lights off, moving carefully to avoid casting shadows. Rex stayed alert, ears perking up at every sound from outside. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were coming to a head, that decisions made in the next few days would change everything. At 6:30, I thought I heard something in the backyard, a rustling too deliberate to be the wind. Rex heard it too, his hackles rising as he stared at the back door. If that's the CIA, Rex, you're my alibi, I whispered, reaching for the flashlight I kept in the kitchen drawer. The sound came again, closer this time, like someone moving along the side of the house. My heart pounded in my chest. Mike wouldn't be here for another half hour. The fake agents must have gotten tired of waiting, decided to take matters into their own hands. I gripped the flashlight tighter, wishing it was something more substantial. Rex pressed against my leg, tense and ready. Another sound at the back window now, a scraping like metal against glass. I moved toward the noise, flashlight raised, Rex at my heels. Whatever was coming, we'd face it together. I was halfway to the back window, flashlight raised like the world's least effective weapon, when headlights swept across my front yard. Rex paused mid-growl, Ears perked. I edged the front window and peered through the blinds. Mike's beat-up Chevy had pulled into my driveway, but he wasn't alone. Another car had arrived right behind him, a massive pickup I recognized as belonging to Dave Rodriguez, another Army buddy who'd served with us in Desert Storm. Dave was built like a linebacker and had the temperament to match. The dark sedan across the street started its engine and pulled away, taillights disappearing around the corner. Brought reinforcements, Mike explained when I opened the door, nodding toward Dave, who was scanning the street with a hyper-vigilance that never quite leaves you after combat. Rex positioned himself between me and the newcomers, sizing them up with cautious curiosity. He didn't growl, but he wasn't rolling out the welcome wagon either. Smart dog, wary of strangers after his time on the streets. "It's okay, boy," I told him. "They're friends." Rex relaxed slightly in my tone, but kept a watchful eye on our visitors. Someone was poking around back there, I told them, gesturing toward the rear of the house. "Trying the windows, I think." Dave cracked his knuckles. "Want to check it out?" We did a sweep of the property, finding fresh footprints in the dirt beneath my back window. Whoever it was had been serious about getting in. Back inside, I showed Mike the letter from the town council, while Dave kept watch at the windows. Rex stayed close to me, occasionally sniffing at our visitors, but maintaining a cautious distance. "They're moving fast," Mike said, whistling. "Someone at town hall really wants those coins. Probably half the town by now." I replied, "Every time I go outside, someone's watching me." Mike tapped the letter thoughtfully. "We need to secure the coins tonight. My office has a safe, and we've got an actual security system. Tomorrow, first thing, we'll get a safe deposit box at First National." It wasn't ideal hauling the treasure through town at night, but staying put seemed riskier. We divided the coins between our 3 vehicles, figuring anyone watching would follow me, not Mike or Dave. Sure enough, as we pulled away from my house in a 3-car convoy, headlights appeared behind us. Dave dropped back, then turned suddenly down a side street. I heard later that he led our tail on a wild chase halfway to the county line before losing them. Mike and I made it to his office building without incident. His law practice occupied a small converted house on the edge of the business district, nothing fancy but secure. The safe was old but solid, hidden behind a false panel in his private office. "Should be safe here for tonight," Mike said as we locked the last of coins away. Rex had insisted on coming along, and was now inspecting every corner of Mike's office, like he was conducting a security audit. "Tomorrow we'll get that safe deposit box, then start the legal process. I've been looking into it. We might be able to make a case under treasure trove law. The note from Crow helps a lot." I nodded, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease for the first time in days. "What about those guys in the cheap suits? If they show up again, we'll have them checked out. I've got a buddy in the sheriff's department. Real federal agents don't run when they see witnesses arrive." True to his word, Mike had everything organized by the next morning. We transferred the coins to a safe deposit box at First National Bank, with both our names on the signature card. He filed the necessary legal paperwork to contest the town's claim, citing Crow's note as evidence that the coins were meant to be found and used, not seized as municipal property. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and unexpectedly, an authentication process for the coins. Turns out, some of the double eagles were even rarer than Joe had thought. 3 of them were from limited minages that collectors would pay premium prices for. One was worth nearly $800,000 all by itself. Mike found a reputable auction house in Chicago willing to handle the sale discreetly. They specialize in rare coins and assured us we'd get top dollar without drawing too much local attention. Through it all, Rex stuck by my side, gradually warming up to Mike and Dave as they became regular visitors. He'd taken to carrying his rubber chicken everywhere, like a security blanket. Those fake agents never showed up again. Mike's theory was that they were probably hired by some collector who'd heard about the find and wanted to get to the coins before they hit the market. Just another case of greed over ethics. The town council didn't give up easily, but they were fighting an uphill battle. Mike found precedents in similar cases where finders had been awarded ownership, especially when there was evidence of intentional hiding with the purpose of future discovery. Crow's note was our ace in the hole. Finally, after 6 tense weeks, we reached a settlement. The town dropped their claim in exchange for a community contribution of 15% of the proceeds. It was a small price to pay for peace of mind. The auction exceeded all expectations. With the rarest coins bringing in premium prices, the final tally came to just over $5.2 million. After the auction house's commission, the town's cut in federal taxes, which took a hefty $1.6 million, I was left with about $3.4 million. It was more money than I could wrap my head around. Me, Tom Hayes, high school dropout and Desert Storm vet, sitting in an office with a banker explaining investment options. Life has a weird sense of humor, sometimes. I sat in Mike's office 1 month after finding the coins, signing the final paperwork. Rex was sprawled on the carpet, his rubber chicken within Paws' reach, snoring softly. The smell of coffee permeated the room, mixing with the scent of old law books and paper. "That's it," Mike said, sliding the last document into a folder. "All official. Everything's been paid. Taxes, the town's share, our fees. The rest is yours. Clean and legal." I stared at the figure on the bank statement. Even after everything, it was life-changing money. "So it wasn't all for nothing," I said, still not quite believing it. "Not even close," Mike replied. "Question is, what now?" I'd given that a lot of thought during the sleepless nights of the past month. I've got some ideas. The first check I wrote was for $1 million to establish the Rex's Paws Animal Shelter, purchasing the old building and surrounding land outright, funding renovations, and creating an endowment for operating costs. Margaret Wilson cried when I told her, then immediately started planning expanded facilities. The second check was for $900,000 to create a workshop and training center for veterans. I'd seen too many guys come back from war with nowhere to channel their skills and energy. The center would teach auto mechanics, welding, carpentry, hands-on trades that could provide both income and purpose. I bought a modest house closer to my shop. Nothing fancy, just newer than my old place, with a fenced yard where Rex could run. No point in mansions or sports cars. That wasn't me. The rest went into investments that would provide steady income for years to come. Enough that I could focus on the parts of my auto business I actually enjoyed without worrying about making rent. 2 months after the night Rex led me to Crow's farm, we held the grand opening of the new animal shelter. The mayor of Rockford was there for the ribbon cutting, along with half the town. Amazing how finding millions in gold coins suddenly makes you popular. Rex, freshly groomed for the occasion but still sporting his characteristically torn ear, was a guest of honor. I'd found him a bow-tie collar for the event, which he tolerated with surprising dignity. That dignity lasted right up until the ribbon-cutting moment, when Rex decided the ceremonial scissors weren't moving fast enough. He lunged forward, snatched the ribbon in his teeth, and tore through it himself to the delight of the crowd. Then, apparently feeling that one act of rebellion wasn't enough, he snagged a hot dog right out of the mayor's hand during his congratulatory handshake with me. "Is your dog the mayor now, or just a thief?" I whispered to Rex as the crowd roared with laughter. Even the mayor was a good sport about it, declaring Rex the true spirit of Rockford. Kids swarmed around Rex, who soaked up the attention like he'd been waiting for it his whole life. Watching him go from dumpster diving stray to hometown celebrity in 2 months was almost as surprising as finding the treasure. My phone rang that evening as Rex and I were relaxing at home, both of us exhausted from the day's excitement. It was Anne. "The shelter looks amazing, Tom," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "What you're doing, it's really something." I waited, sensing there was more. "I owe you an apology," she continued. "For Easter, for how we treated you, and for coming around only after hearing about the money. It wasn't how families should act. Part of me wanted to hold on to the hurt, but what was the point? Life was too short. I don't hold any grudges," I told her, "but my home is with Rex now. He's my family." The silence on the line spoke volumes. Finally, Ann said, "I understand, but maybe we could try again sometime." A regular dinner. No holidays. No pressure. Maybe, I said. Give me some time. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a start. The Veterans Workshop opened a month later. We converted an old warehouse near my auto shop, filling it with equipment and hiring instructors, all vets themselves. I split my time between my regular business and teaching classes there, finding unexpected satisfaction in passing on what I knew. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the workshop office, the smell of fresh paint and motor oil in the air. Rex was curled up on a dog bed I'd put in the corner, his rubber chicken tucked securely under one paw. I pulled Crow's note from my wallet, where I'd kept it since the night we found the treasure. For the one who values goodness over greed, use it wisely. The old man had known what he was doing. Maybe he'd even known it would be me who found it someday. Perhaps that's why he'd shown me the symbol all those years ago, planting a seed that would bloom when the time was right. Through the window, I could see neighborhood kids playing basketball in the newly paved lot behind the workshop. We'd installed hoops to give them somewhere safe to hang out after school. Their shouts and laughter filtered through the glass. Life isn't about what you take, I realized, but what you leave behind. All those years I thought I had nothing much to offer, when all it took was a chance, and a scruffy dog with a torn ear, to show me otherwise. I folded the note carefully and put it back in my wallet. Rex opened one eye, watching me. The old man was right. I told him, goodness does win in the end. Rex thumped his tail against the floor twice, then went back to sleep, secure in the knowledge that he had found his person, just as surely as he found that buried bone. Outside, the kids played on, their voices carrying the evening air. I smiled, feeling a contentment I'd never expected to find. It turns out treasures come in all forms. Sometimes they're gold coins buried in the dirt. Sometimes they're second chances. And sometimes they're mangy strays with torn ears who lead you exactly where you need to go.